Well, howdy there, folks. This is your host, ID Jester. We're going to be looking at Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian Entertainment here. The long-awaited arrival of Pillars of Eternity is finally here. This game was kickstarted about 3 years ago, and it had 70,000 backers, and obviously was successfully kickstarted. And it's finally the day it has arrived to our grand PCs so we can take a look at it. I've been watching some videos and checking out this game as it's been getting closer and closer to finalization, and now that it's here, we're going to have a chance to play it for ourselves. So that is very, very exciting. This episode here is going to be basically just talking about the game, what it does, and how everything interacts in the actual system. Fortunately for us, Obsidian Entertainment has decided to create their own world, their own story, and most importantly, has created their own rules set for this game, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy they didn't choose Dungeons and Dragons rules or any other established rules, because a lot of those RPG face-to-face combat system rules for RPGs just really don't have as the complete package as to what the computer can bring to us. And I think their new system here is very, very good, and I'm so glad they decided to venture off and do their own thing as opposed to using an already established rule set for pen and paper, when this is obviously not pen and paper. A computer can do so much more, and auto-calculate all the hits and the misses and the damage amounts, and figure out, what kind of bonuses you're getting, what kind of penalties, and it can do that in the millisecond. So unlike pen and paper games, where if you had a very thorough and complex system, you couldn't actually keep track of all that information. It would very much bog down a face-to-face game. We don't have to worry about that because of the processing power of computers. So again, very, very happy with that. This game has been very well received already. It is just released, but PC Gamer has rated it of 93, and a lot of the other sites out there are already saying that this could be RPG Game of the Year. So very excited to introduce this to you. Again, this episode is just going to be a walkthrough on the gaming system, how everything interacts with one another, basically talk about how things are done and everything. For those of you who don't know about Pillars of Eternity, it's basically harkens back to the old days of Baldur's Gate 2 and Planescape Torment, where you have a set of characters on a map. You're going to be moving them around. You're going to have things to interact on the screen, and it all takes place in real time, although you do have the option to pause at any time with the space bar, so you can issue orders to your different characters. You can plan out and strategize how you want to proceed with each individual encounter. So, lots to talk about. We're going to go ahead and get into it. First things first, we're going to look at the options menu here, because this is going to be kind of important as to what you can do here. There are lots of different ways that you can experience this game. First of all, if we go to the games menu here, you can see here there are different check boxes for a lot of different things. So if you want cool combat tooltips, show the tutorials, just quest updates, everything on there. You can adjust how long your tooltips delays stay on the screen, your scroll speed, how big an area you auto loot. So obviously, might even crank that up a little bit, maybe up to 6 meters. That'll be fine. Controls, basically you're going to be using just your mouse and a few of the keys and the keyboard. There are obviously lots and lots and lots of different things you can use here to set up different keyboard shortcuts there. Auto pause is obviously one of the most important things. There are literally lots and lots of boxes where you can have the game auto pause it. Probably the most important for most people are going to be this one here, enemy spotted. So as soon as the party sees an enemy, it's going to pause the game, give you a chance so they don't get the drop on you, come running over immediately without you knowing that they're there, and doing some damage. So obviously enemy spotted. I think actually that was turned off by default. I actually had to come in and turn that on. And of course you can choose whether or not to stop your party movement when this happens, which I will do. There's lots of other options here. You can turn on auto pause when you find a hidden object, when they finish an ability, when a character is hit, when a character is attacked. You can, when combat starts, you can stop party movement. You can even have an auto pause every time someone casts a spell or when a target has been destroyed. This might also be another good option because a lot of times you'll tell several party members to go ahead and attack, let's just say a character on the screen, and one of the characters ends up killing it and the other one just stands there and doesn't attack anymore because the target that you had given him is automatically, has been already killed, so he'll just stand there. So a lot of times this might be a good option for some people depending on how interactive you want your combats to be. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep in mind there. Graphic wise, we got it on the high settings there, lots of other options. I did turn up the font scale a little bit. This game, as it says here, is heavy text game. So a little bit easier to read for me, maybe, see the text. I'm actually going to crank it up to about 120. We can always come back in and adjust that if we need to. And I've got the sound turned down so you can hear it hopefully in the background, but it's not too loud and you can hear my voice. So that's pretty much the options menu there. Lots of really good options for you to look at before you actually start up the game. Alright, so we are going to start a new game here. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're going to spend some time here looking at the different characters. We're going to look at the combat system and such. So there won't be any actual gameplay in this video. This is just to get all the new people out there familiar with how things are done in Pillars of Eternity. So we're going to create a new game. So there are lots of different options: easy, norm, hard, and path of the dam. Enemies are going to receive a bonus on most stats. Encounters will have more enemies. This option can't be changed in game. It is only intended for players who want the most punishing encounters. So if you choose this and you start the game, that is how you will continue the game throughout. Unlike easy, normal, and hard, if you started on normal and find the game a little bit too hard, you can crank it down to easy. If you start on normal and find it too easy, you can crank it up to hard. So these options you can kind of go through the game and adjust it based on your how things are going and how easy or hard you find the game. This option obviously you cannot. Then there are two very important modes down here at the bottom. Expert mode disables a number of the helper features in the game, and in fact if we click this and we went back in the options menu, you will notice there's a lot of things grayed out. We can no longer have things like where it'll auto pause the game when we see an enemy, things like that. It can't be enabled in the game, and if it's disabled, it cannot be re-enabled in the game. So once you start the game in expert mode, you have to continue it just like the Path of the Dam. So obviously you could have a heck of a combination with Path of the Dam and expert mode. Not only that, but you have Tide of Iron. Tide of Iron means there will only ever be one save file ever, and if your main player is killed, this file is deleted and you must start over. GG, good game, it's over. So obviously if you want the permadeath option and if your character ever gets killed, however he ends up dying, he or she, I guess, ends up dying, you will obviously have to start the game over because it will remove your save file. If players killed, the file is deleted and you must start again. And again, this option can't be changed in the game. So if you start the game like this and then say, oh man, this is way too hard, I'm having too rough a time, whatever, you can't change these options. So definitely think about that before you start up a game. I am just going to be playing a normal mode. I'm going to be going pretty slow, especially in the beginning. Things, as you're learning things and trying to figure out how best to handle your new characters, your new powers, and everything. Again, this is a brand new system with brand new stats, brand new everything. So it might take some players some getting used to. I would try to play it on a little bit easier. Play for maybe 6 or 8, 10 hours. And then if you decide, oh man, this is way too easy, crank it up to normal and then to hard, etc. And then if you decide, well, you know what, I don't like to, do that. Let's crank it up to expert mode, whatever you decide. But I would definitely try your first one on either easy, if you're familiar with these kinds, or unfamiliar with these kinds of games, or normal mode if you are familiar with them. And that way you can adjust it. I would leave off expert and Tide of Iron mode. So there we go. So we'll hit accept here. There's going to be a cut screen coming up. I am going to bypass that in favor of getting into more complex information about how the Pillars of Eternity plays and the brand new wonderful combat system. So, screen, and I think we go into a little movie here. There we go. We are going to be done with that. We're just going to go in. It basically tells you kind of a little bit of backstory. Now, so this is where we're going to be spending the rest of the episode pretty much talking about how the combat system works, the different classes and stuff. I'm not sure how long this video will take. It's probably going to be pretty lengthy because there is a lot to talk about. So, if you are familiar with any kind of face-to-face RPG games, it's based on basically everybody taking a action during a round and using your attacks to try to damage the enemy, and your defenses preventing the damage coming to your characters. That is mostly true in the new system, although that is not 100% accurate. There are no rounds in this. It's not everyone gets to take an action. Basically what happens is every action you take, whether it's casting a spell, swinging a sword, stabbing someone with a dagger, or moving, or whatever, everything in the game takes a certain amount of time, and then it also takes a certain amount of recovery time to recover from what you're doing. So let's just say, for an example, it's you have a character and it takes 1 second to swing your sword. It might take you a further 1 second to ready yourself for another attack, or it might take several seconds for you to ready yourself for another attack. If, for whatever reason, based on your race, your class, your attributes, or whatever, if it only takes you, say, half a second to swing a sword, you're going to be ready to swing your sword a half a second earlier than maybe someone else can. So you're going to actually get another attack in before they're ready and they have recovered. Not only that, there is very important mechanic in this game where your attacks, your spells and everything can be interrupted. So if it takes me, say, a second to swing my sword, and while I'm swinging my sword, somebody else has an attack that only costs them half a second, their half a second attack is going to hit me before my attack is ready to go off. If based on the dice rolls and my stats and their stats, they end up interrupting me, I have to start the process of swinging my sword over again because I've been interrupted. So that is one of the most important mechanics in this game, is everything is time-based and how much time you take to do things with this system, and you can interrupt other people's attacks, which is really, really good because, like I mentioned in the intro here, the computer can keep track of all of this very important information in split milliseconds and calculate it all up. Hundreds of these calculations, thousands of these calculations it can do, which we couldn't do in a face-to-face game, obviously, because it would just bog down the combat there. So you can make a character in this game that has really, really fast attacks that maybe don't do a lot of damage. Maybe say like a dagger attack, and maybe your dagger attack takes like, and I'm just throwing out examples here now. Say a half a second to attack, and then 2 seconds to ready yourself. And you can see that you could also make a really tough fighter that wears lots of armor and using a two-handed sword. His attack might take, say, 2 seconds for his attack, plus, 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds to recover. So you could actually use your attack, your dagger attack, on a lightly armored person. You might be able to get like maybe attack or 2 attacks off for each of the opponent's attacks. So there's lots of different ways to build your characters, and that's going to be important when we start talking about attributes and how everything works. There are lots of different races and classes and stuff we're going to look at here, but we're basically going to be building our character. We're just going to kind of go over the races and the classes kind of arbitrarily as we decide which character we're going to make. There are male and female characters, obviously, in the game, and they don't have any difference in stats whatsoever. So it's just mostly visual if you want to play a male or female character. In my case, I'm probably going to be making a male character, although a female character would be kind of interesting to play through. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and play a female character. And we'll play next here. So there are 6 different races in the game currently, but each of these races, there are several sub-categories. So you can see if I choose human, it's going to ask me what kind of human. Do I want to be a meadow folk, an ocean folk, or savanna folk? If I choose a dwarf, it's going to ask me, do I want to be a mountain dwarf or boreal dwarf? So even though there's just 6 main races, each of the races has a subcategory. There are some new races as well, made up by the World and Obsidian Order here. So we got our standard human. We have a new kind of race that is new to most face-to-face games. This is basically a aquatic kind of race that are kind of bigger and tougher than most other races. You can see, you can see that they get a might +2, but that doesn't mean much to you until we actually talk about attributes. And of course, they have a couple different. There's an island variety and a coastal variety. Don't worry about your picture or whatever, because there's appearance. There is lots and lots to talk about when we get to appearance. But basically, these are kind of aquatic type humanoids that live up and grow around water. They don't have like special. They can't they don't have gills or anything like that. Of course, you have your stereotypical kind of dwarf characters, kind of shorter, stouter. You can see they have different bonuses. Now, here's the interesting thing: all the different races and all the different races, no matter what you choose, is going to end up getting a +2 to their attributes total. So you can see here, this one gets a +2, a -1, and a +1. So if you add all that together, you still end up with 2. If we choose an Orlin here, we get +2, +1, -1, add all that up, it's +2. So it doesn't matter what race you get, you're still going to have the same amount of attribute points. They're just going to be in different abilities. So Dwarf, again, is kind of your stout, tougher, kind of stereotypical dwarf. Elf, again, kind of your stereotypical, kind of taller and thinner, kind of more nimble and quick, very fast reflexes, kind of dodgy kind of race. You have the Orlan, which are kind of, I don't know, maybe like a combination of halfling and hobbit, and maybe a little gnome thrown in there, and maybe a little elf because of their ears. I don't know. Um, they are, let's see here. They're known for their mental intensity and their quickness. So obviously their stats are going to be part of that. So very interesting, kind of different. Not your stereotypical halfling, I guess. They got a little bit more history, more mental. And then, of course, we have the godlike, which have some very interesting facial things going on. There are multiple different. There are death, which is this one, fire, moon, and nature. So again, you can customize your appearance later on. These are humanoids that have kind of been altered by the gods themselves into this new race. And they kind of specialize in death, fire, moon, or nature. So there's your, again, 6 races, lots of subcategories based on which race you're going to play. If you want to try something new, I would try the Amanu, or the Godlike, or the Orlan. Obviously, if you want to play something you're a little more familiar with, obviously human, dwarf, or elf. That is a really good question. What kind of race and class am I going to be? I think I'm going to go with the... I'm thinking elf. I'm thinking elf is what I'm thinking. I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about this. I want to just get into more of the how the game works here. But I think we'll go with an elf, and so against an enemy that is more than 4 meters away, wood elves gain a bonus to accuracy, deflection, and reflexes. A pale elves have increased burn and frost damage reduction. So obviously that's actually looks pretty interesting there. Let's go with the pale elf. Wow, it didn't take me as long as I thought it was going to, because actually setting up your character for a game you're going to be playing for many, many hours obviously is like the most important thing. I think most people will spend an hour, maybe 2 in this menu, really fine-tuning their characters, really looking over the different options. Classes. Barbarian, obviously kind of a lot of these are kind of stereotypical, just like all your other role-playing games. Tough fighter, basically. You have a Cipher. They are kind of new. Basically, they use their abilities to kind of damage enemies, that kind of give them power to use like mind tricks, and to do what they call focus is what they get. They hit enemies and it builds up their focus. Once their focus gets to a certain point, they can basically cast spells, and even though they're not considered spells, but they can cast spells that'll do things to all kinds of really interesting, what's the best way to put it, just attacks, damage. You can summon things in, just all kinds of really interesting things. In fact, I'm thinking considerably about making a nice Cipher for our first character, because they seem really interesting. Fighter, a little bit tougher than the Barbarian, just damage reduction wise. Obviously, Barbarian is going to have not very good damage reduction. We haven't talked about that yet, but we're going to talk heavily about that when we get to attributes. So a little bit tougher. Paladin is kind of your holy warrior. Again, kind of stereotypical. A lot of these have different kind of stats that go along with them. So you can see a fighter here gets high endurance, high health, very high accuracy, and very high deflection. If we look at the Paladin here, We got high, high, average, very high. So you can see a slight difference in the different stats based on the fighter and the paladin. But of course, the paladin is going to have other bonuses. They're going to have a special power that they can use once an encounter. I believe it's once an encounter. A ranger, pretty stereotypical ranger. Shoot from the back. You actually get a companion, I believe, if you choose a ranger. Animal companions do not do much damage, but they have high damage reduction. Blah, 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 blah. So I might even play a ranger. We have, of course, our wizards here. You can see, again, endurance very low, health very low, accuracy very low, deflection very low. But, of course, to offset kind of their lower statistic value, they have, of course, many spells to cast out there to damage and do all kinds of great things. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. Rogue here, pretty much a thief, pretty stereotypical. Priest is kind of your holy warrior that can cure and do things, holy things. Pretty regular. Monk is your unarmed fighter, punches people and uses weapons such as that. You can see in here high endurance, very high health, and very high accuracy and very high deflection. So they don't have a lot of weapons, but they have very high stats. Druid is exactly what you would think from any other role-playing game. They can transform into an animal. They have some spells, but they also have, obviously, some damage potential with weapons and such. So, Chanter. Okay, so Chanter, if we think about an I keep saying enchanter, but it's not an enchanter, it's just Chanter. Basically, think of a Chanter, and this is really cool, actually, is kind of like a bard. Basically, as the battle is going on, they're singing a song, and they're saying things to the enemy. How dost thou do blah blah, and they're saying these things, and based on what they're saying, gives them different bonuses. And if you chant several lines of a song, it then gets to a point where you can then get like a special power based on how you set up your chanting. So they can be kind of very interesting that plays out that way. So basically, when we look at your class, most of them are pretty familiar, although the Chanter and the Cipher are pretty different than what you would expect. Again, Cipher kind of has their own focus, power, that they damage enemies, and then they get a powerful soul-focused effect that they can use. And the Chanter, again, can continuously speak chants made up of magical phrases. Phrases produce passive effects and help build a character's power until they can use an invocation. An invocation is a powerful magical effect that chanters can create after having spoken a required number of phrases through their chants. So, kind of what I was explaining. Maybe they did a little bit of job of explaining it better than I did. But basically, you're going to be singing a song and getting a bonus. And then once you get through enough lines of the song, it gives you the power to cast an invocation. So, lots of good choices. What do we have? 11. Barbarian. Each of the classes obviously have a nice little, when a barbarian hits with the melee attack, they automatically make reduced damage attacks on all other enemies within a short distance of the target. So maybe like a cleave type of power. Your fighter, a little bit tougher. You can see very high stats here on all the things that are going to make them very tough, but we're going to look at stats here in a little bit. Paladins give a inherent bonus to all their defenses, and over the value of the game, their bonus might shift based on their reputation that the paladin gains relative to their behavior. Okay. Ranger. I'm thinking Ranger or Cipher for this character class. I'm really thinking Cipher because obviously never played as Cipher before. It might be interesting to actually try something a little different. Even though I'm kind of using the default elf, although it is a pale elf, I might just try a Cipher. We do have to worry about endurance, health, low, average, high. So we're not going to be very tanky-y, but obviously we have to hit people. Although a ranger would be fun because you do get an animal companion, which could be very, very cool. If one what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Alright, I'm just going to make a decision. Let's go with my first instinct. My first instinct is Cipher, Ranger. Cipher. Okay, we're going to do Cipher. Screw it. Alright. Next. Cipher. Yes, I got it highlighted. How about you do that? There we go. Alright, so here's the powers we can look at. So what is this here? I don't know much about them, so it might take me a minute here to decide. Anyone caught in the path between the two will suffer corrosive death. Toxic manifestation between the Cipher and the target enemy, and caught in the path between the two will suffer corrosive death. So it's kind of like a beam of acid or some kind of corrosion. Eye strike, dazing and blinding the enemy. Mind wave. Okay, so try to knock them backwards and knock them down. Soul shock damage. Okay. Tenuous grasp. Assault the target's grasp on reality, frightening and confusing them. So frightening them and confusing them. And last, whisper of treason, imparts a secret, charming them. Charm. Charm. I like charm. That's nice. So let's see. That is the dazing and blinding. This is knocking them prone. This is frightening and confusing them. And a lot of these things over here, I'm really trying to go quick because a lot of these things are going to make sense until we talk about them here in just a minute. Let's go with Mind Wave and Whispers of Treason, which really sounds cool. Obviously, you can see different levels of powers. Obviously, as a first level character, we are only going to have access to low-level, first-level stuff. All right, so attributes. Wow, a lot to talk about here. All right, so just like most RPG games out there are 6 different attributes. But unlike most RPG games out there, these attributes, each attribute is very, very important to every single character out there. Because it doesn't just give what you think it would. So, for example, might, you might go, oh, might is just strength, so fighters need to have might. Well, that is totally inaccurate. If we look at might over here, it's actually how much damage you do, how much healing you do, and your fortitude. So anytime things happen to your characters, like for example, if somebody goes to knock me down, they're going to check out my fortitude. So obviously, if I don't have a high might, my fortitude is going to suffer. It also has to do with damage and healing. So every character, whether you're a wizard, whether you're a barbarian or a druid, obviously the higher your might, the more damage and the more healing and the higher your fortitude. So every character obviously is going to want might. Let's look at Constitution. Constitution is going to be your endurance and your health, and again a little bit on your fortitude. If we just mouse over these, they basically tell you what each one is, but we're going to get to that here in a little bit. So Constitution, everybody's going to want endurance because that's basically how many hit points you're going to go in the fight with. Health, Everybody's going to want health because that is how many total hit points you have. And your fortitude, again, is to resist things like poison, disease, anything physical, internal physical systems of the character. Dexterity is, okay, here we go. Every character probably is going to be interested in dexterity because it's going to give you a bonus to, it's an abstraction of the character's hand-eye coordination, balance, and overall grace. In interactions, it can be used for sleight of hand and fast reactions. In combat, it affects the character's action speed and all attacks, spells, and abilities, and contributes to the reflex defenses. So again, how many attacks can I get in? How fast can I attack, basically, with my chosen spell, my chosen weapon? Again, this is not just bow combat, like if you're used to, say, the D&D type system, where, okay, dexterity is good for, shooting ranged weapons, and for picking locks and disarming traps. Okay, you can't think of that anymore because that's not how this system is built. So don't just assume okay, well, I don't need that because dexterity, I'm a mage, I don't need dexterity. Well, dexterity again is going to give us action speed and obviously our reflexes. Our reflexes allow characters to dodge out of the way of physical harmful AoE attacks, such as explosion bolts of lightning. It is defined by the character's class level, dexterity, perception, and may also be influenced by other effects. So this is your ability to get out of the way of danger. Perception, if we look at perception here, perception represents a character's sense of instincts, able to pick up on details. If we just mouse over, it will tell us here. It can be used to catch someone in a lie, to make an observation about an appearance, to notice something, maybe find a secret passage, notice when somebody's lying, be able to spot weaknesses. It also will give you, obviously, deflection and reflex. Again, defensive things as well. Intellect. So I'm a fighter. I'm just, I just care about my might. I don't really care about anything else. Well, you're going to care about intellect, most likely, because some of the powers you use, everything is going to be associated with some of these stats here. Intellect is basically gives you a wider area to use any of your spells, your abilities. Abilities are also have area of effects. That barbarian we looked at a minute ago that could target enemies around them, you notice it didn't say, just adjacent, because it's an area around the barbarian. So a barbarian that shouts, that has a high intellect, will be able to affect more enemies around them. So obviously having a high intellect is going to do this. You can see it's going to give you extra area of effect, extra duration, and give you things, a higher defense against your will. Will is going to be things like mental paralyzation, things that affect your mind, which is obviously very important as well. And then last but not least is your resolve. It's going to give you your internal drive, your determination, your fearlessness, and the emotional intensity that can be projected onto others. In combat, it helps characters maintain their concentration. So that's what we talked about earlier when we talked about a character come up and hit you and interrupt your spell or interrupt your attack. Concentration will help you resist their attack from being interrupted. So concentration obviously determines how likely you are to have their spell or attack interrupted during combat. So obviously having a very high resolve is obviously good, and it's going to also add to your deflection and your will. So they all interact very well with one another. It's not just, okay, I'm kind of a fightery, magey type character that uses focus, and I only need to put stats in one or two things. That's not it at all. you're probably going to want to put stats in a lot of, you want to kind of send them out. In this system here, each time you put a point in, you get a certain amount of bonus. So if we look at resolve here, you can see we actually have +3 to concentration, +1 deflection, and +2 will. If I put another point in it, all these stats will go up a certain amount. So +3, +1, +2, we go up to +6, +2, +4. You notice they basically, I gained 3, 1, and 2 to each one of these stats. So unlike D&D that has like a progressive system where each time I put a point into it, it costs me a certain amount of points, you can see I can do each point individually to get a extra ability point on this, and it's going to give me the same exact bonus as I go up. So there's no change. Like when I get to a 15, I don't all of a sudden go, oh, you get a +4 to your concentration or anything like that. So even fine-tune your characters even better. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, straight down the line is the base. You can see because of our race and class, we get a bonus to dexterity and perception. And actually, I think it was on intellect as well. I think when I was adjusting these, I'm not sure what the bases are. But I think every character starts with 15 points. So again, if I want to put points in might, you will see I've now got 3% damage and +2 to my fortitude. If I put another point into it, I'm going to go up to 6% damage and +4 fortitude, because that's the bonus you get. There we go. And you can see if I go and put another point in, I'm going to get 9 damage and 6 fortitude. Okay, so you can actually calculate this out ahead of time and know exactly what you're going to get based on how many points. The thing to help build your character are these little stars over here that just say, this is your gold standard for ability points. If you want to put, you should definitely put a lot of points into intellect because you're going to be using intellect a lot. So we're going to put, just a couple points in that. Again, silver is like, okay, these are your next 2 most important stats. So we're going to put a couple in there. We'll put an extra one in perception, another one in resolve, another 2 in constitution, and maybe another one in resolve, and then we have one more in intellect. So we would have 16, 12, 12, 13, 12, 13. Now, of course, I can change that and say, you know what? Action speed, very important. Oh my God, if I get rid of action speed, I can get a little bit more endurance. Is it worth it? Oh my gosh, it's like every point is like gold. You really, really, really can get into the fine minutes of trying to figure out the best things to do for your character. Maybe you want a character that can, doesn't have much perception. And has obviously a higher intellect. You can see there, my area of effect, my duration, and my will are going through the roof. Am I putting too many points in this? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't played. I don't know. All right, that's it. That's what we're doing. 13, 14, 12, 11, 16, 12. All right. So it kind of explains a little bit about what's going on here. But again, you won't actually see this until you actually get into combat and see how everything plays. But we'll obviously be there in just a few minutes to check this out, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time left on culture. So there's different parts of the world that you could be from that might give you different bonuses. It looks like this is giving me +1 resolve. If we wanted to even get +1 intellect, probably adjust what kind of weapons and armor you start with, it looks like. As you can see here, this character would start with a bow and like padded armor. This one here would start with an axe and a sword and maybe padded armor. This character here has got a spear. I kind of like the spear. Resolve. That would be kind of nice. This one's dexterity. That would go up to 14. Resolve again, but if from a different area, we'd start with a sword. You can see a lot of these are kind of resolve. I think this one was a resolve, and these were just the two resolve. So if you wanted to have a higher resolve, you'd have to choose one of these two. I kind of like the spear. That's kind of different. Not too many characters using spheres. Let's see what it says here. Fertile savannas, farmed by humans and Orland residents. The Macmillan culture is of the oldest world. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Next. Alright. Background. So there's different backgrounds you can add to your characters, and they're going to give you other, which we haven't even looked at yet, but there are other kind of default skills. Think of them as skills. We have athletic, we have lore, stealth, survival. I think there's actually 6 of them. Let's see here. Stealth, survival, athletics, mechanics, lore, and survival, I think, are the ones. So you can be a hunter, a mercenary, a philosopher, a laborer, a scholar, a merchant, drifter. Drifter sounds cool. Aristocrat. I almost sneezed there, sorry. Stealth and lore. Hunter gives us survival and stealth. Athletics and lore. Lots of lore. We are just lore. I guess we should be kind of lore-y. Aristocrat. Lavish meals and extravagant parties. Sure, that sounds good. Let's be an aristocrat. Somebody of high value here. Alright, so now those characters out here can actually have lots and lots of fun. Just creating their characters, choosing different hairstyles. No. You can actually, I believe, zoom in here. Maybe you can in this screen. Kind of like that. I don't like the big bonnet there. Nope, don't like that. Don't like that. No. Kind of like that. It's kind of regal looking. And of course, you can adjust your primary and secondary colors, your skin, your hair color. Go more of a green or more of a pale, more of a fleshy color, more golden. I kind of like the gold. Goes cool with our skin, which is that kind of aqua color. We go a little bit. No, I like our aqua color. We're a pale elf. And of course, we can choose our portrait. It doesn't look much like us. That looks a little bit more like us. Obviously not those. Ugh. No. Alright, I don't think there's that many portraits right now. So we'll just keep that. That's fine. Voice. Obviously lots of different.
I'm here.
And since we're an aristocrat, we're going to be noble. That's just... Alright, now. Toughest damn part of the whole thing. Galadin. I'm just trying to think of cool name here. Galindin. Galindin. That sounds nice. Well, welcome to Galindin. There we go. One thing I would probably like to change, I don't like her hair being gold. So for those of you out here that are screaming at me going, oh my god, that looks horrible. It's kind of more of a almost like her, almost a little too much like it. Let's see what that looks a little better there. Kind of matches her skin tone as opposed to that. Okay, I think going in, and we are done. So 50 minutes, but most of it was just talking about things. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and put a cut in here before we get into 2 months here. And come back next episode, we're going to talk about combat and how everything interacts specifically. You can see it. But hopefully you got a good idea of how to adjust your character and the basis behind the system. And like I said, you probably need to see the combat so you can see what's going on a little bit better. But we're going to do that next episode. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Do appreciate it. Be sure to leave your thoughts, comments, suggestions. Well, again, Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian Entertainment. And very long-awaited game. It has finally arrived, so we're very excited to play it. See you guys next episode.